This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to this week's edition of Doc and Jock. I am the Doc, John Macaroon, looking forward to talking about a victory for the Detroit Lions. What does it mean? Even though it wasn't a great performance, Aaron Rodgers really not giving the Lions a lot of credit for their performance. When you win a game 15-9, you still have a lot to break down in regards to the football team. The Lions are no longer holding the top spot in regards to the 2023 draft. What does this mean win? Looking at all things in regards to the Lions this week with our time. So I'm looking forward to it. At least it was a win, and I'm looking forward to breaking it all down with my guy Adam, the Jock Strozinski. What's up, cuz? What's happening?
I really hope you take that positive mindset when we talk about this game and we talk about these Detroit Lions. Because I'm going to be honest with you, man, watching what I watched on Sunday, this game really felt like a game of who wanted it least. I mean, Green Bay, obviously, there is a ton of dysfunction with that organization right now, whether it's Aaron Rodgers manifesting most of this, whether it's young wide receivers and him just not having patience to help get them on the same page, or it's Matt LaFleur, who it seems like ever since he's taken over at Green Bay, it's been a misstep here, a misstep there. I mean, able to win generally 13 games a year, but still come up short when it matters the most. Or your Detroit Lions, who I got an interesting take on Dan Campbell, and I'm wondering if you're going to ride with me on it, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. But look, this was a bit of a surprise win. I don't think either one of us gave them much of a chance. We both knew Green Bay is kind of what Green Bay is at this point, not very good. But I think we both thought the Lions were worse than what Green Bay was going to put on the field. This game, if you paid money to go watch this, I feel like you should go ask for a refund and be entitled to it. This game was absolutely awful. It was boring. It sucked. There was bad coaching, and there was bad play on the field. I'm happy the Lions won. I guess. Like, I don't even know where I stand with this team anymore, because what are we, 8 games in? 8 weeks in? I don't even know anymore, and I'm just kind of over this Lions season. This Lions season has been so rough to watch, and this game, I think, epitomized all of that. What was your take on taking this game in live? Like, I told you before, I'm not 100% sure how you do this and why you do this, right? You have access to these games, and you go to these games, and you watch these games. I know you like to go and be the reporter and do all that jazz. Watching these games at Ford Field blows. It sucks. Look, the food is good, but watching it at Ford Field sucks because you're way high up in the press box. I feel like you get a better view watching it from your couch at home, yet you love taking these games in. What was your experience taking this game in? Because I found myself at numerous points screaming at my TV, taking my hat off and slamming it on the table, and getting ready to throw something through my TV. I was pretty upset watching this entire game, and the Detroit Lions won. And the Detroit Lions won this game.
Yeah,
let that marinate.
Yeah, it was crazy because the Packers were moving the football. It was obviously the definition of bend, don't break. But for me, it was exciting because the end result of the drives were turnovers. You know, Kirby Joseph, part of it is cool is that, I'm a psychologist, so you get to kind of get the inner workings of these athletes who are rich and flaunt big-time jewelry and have big egos. So there's an appeal there for me to kind of get to know what does it take for someone that's at the top of their profession playing in the NFL, but also at the same time playing for an organization that is known as the worst. So it's kind of like being in the dance, but being in the worst dance possible. So it's always the unique dichotomy there. I had spoken to Kirby Joseph. If you follow All Lions, you've seen this year stepped it up a little bit, going to the locker room, actually walking up to these dudes and just being a guy that's open to talk to them. I interviewed Kirby Joseph. I've interviewed James Mitchell. And Kirby Joseph, there's a story that I wrote called, "Hey, my time is coming," in training camp. Now, he was a little bit more shy or wasn't sending out poop emojis on Instagram when he spoke to me, but this is a player that I had sensed was around the ball, and so I chatted up with him. You get them when they're younger, where they're not so hardened and willing to blow you off like Michael Brockers. But you get a chance to see football at a different level from that perspective. And at the same time, I am typing, so I am trying to put together a story and kind of do things creatively. So on that front, I pay attention to the Lions defense. They made some plays. But at the same time, the fan in me was like, God damn, Aaron Rodgers blows. He is sucking today. And it does go to where I would see your sense of it, where you're like, this game sucks. It's not entertaining. There's no points. There are drives that are ending in a lot of mistakes. But the fan in me was just like, hey, I've seen so many times where opponents come in, and Kyler Murray almost just said it like, dude, I didn't even know that this game was going to even be physical. We always kind of know that you don't get your opponent's best when you play the Lions, because even Aaron Rodgers said, he didn't emphasize it, but he said, you can't lose to that team. The Lions aren't respected across the league, and most people believe that, you can't say it, but most teams believe that if they give a B- effort, they reasonably have a chance to beat the Lions. The Packers gave a D- effort, and listen, for those that are jumping on the Lions bandwagon and starting to philosophize about what does a victory mean over the Packers, it doesn't mean shit. You got your second win, but yes, the Packers did make a lot of mistakes. Rodgers underthrew a pass to Bakhtiari and threw it right to Hutchinson. The pass off Barnes' helmet, that's bad luck, but Aaron Rodgers moved the football. Unfortunately, the roster that the Packers have, they don't have closers. When you're throwing to Sammy Watkins and Alan Lazard, and basically, I'm shocked they didn't go to Tunyon at that final play of the game. They moved the football. It's just the Lions at the end of the day made the plays, and they got the victory. Most people thought that the Lions had a chance because of just how bad the Packers were playing, but it's a combination of both, but I lean more toward, me personally, that the Packers, with one more player that stayed healthy, Dobbs got hurt right away. Rashawn Gary goes out. It looked like literally the Lions were playing the Lions, and it was just nice to see another team crash and burn for once and it not be the Lions. So you're absolutely right. I think you're looking at it collectively as well. 2-6 sucks. The offense is injury depleted, and it's a team that really, in essence, is tanking without really saying they're tanking. They put DeAndre Swift on a pitch count. You don't have Josh Reynolds. When you're starting lineup, I laughed. When they announced Tom Kennedy, Khalif Raymond, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, bro, you're taller and bigger than all three of those guys combined. That's the level of wide receivers they put out there. So that's the way it went for me. I just go there, do the job, and handle business and come home. But yeah, in terms of entertaining value, I got my fill with Seattle. That was a great game back and forth and things like that. Yeah, the game where I was the most devastated this year was Minnesota, where I was into it and I thought that there was a win. After that, it's just been more professional, but I could see why. What made you, tell me a couple things that just made you really throw your hat? I'm sure the words fourth down are going to come out of your mouth.
Yeah, we'll just get into it then, because honestly, it's Dan Campbell. It's Dan Campbell. This team, in my estimation, won in spite of their head coach. Dan Campbell continues to put this team in bad spots and attempt to put this team behind the eight ball. I keep hoping that one day I'm going to wake up and Dan Campbell's going to be like, yeah, I coached us to a 2-15 record because we wanted the first overall draft pick, because we wanted to get our quarterback of the future. Ha ha ha, jokes on everybody else in this league. I'm a really great coach and I can do things. I'll show you now. That's what I keep hoping happens. And that's the one thing that I'm holding on to. But from the moment this game got going, the very first drive, you're on Green Bay's 7-yard line. It's 4th and 1. You're going to attempt to go for it? This is a team that regularly comes into your house and kicks your ass. Do the smart thing. Your team got all the way down there. Take the points. Take the field goal. If you don't believe in your field goal kicker, then why do you have him? Free up another spot on your roster. Bring somebody else in if you're not going to attempt field goals. If you're not going to settle for those easy points, why the hell do you have him on your roster? Take the points. That's what good football coaches do. That's what smart teams do. At any point, you could have put yourself up by 3 points with the very first drive. And then later on in the game, when this game was much, much closer and Green Bay had a chance to win this game, you didn't have to worry about whether or not they were going to score a touchdown, or you didn't have to worry about whether or not this team was going to kick a field goal. You didn't have to worry about anything that this team was going to do to possibly take the lead and win this game. You would have already put it out of hand, and you would have already sealed the deal. Instead, you put your defense in a really bad spot. You put your offense in a bad spot as well, but you put your defense in a really bad spot where they now have to make a play down the stretch, where they have to come up big. And look, yeah, Green Bay this game sucked. Aaron Rodgers was absolutely horrible. Believe me, I'll tell you about it. He killed my fantasy team this week. Both of them, actually. So he sucked ass. So I get that you maybe felt okay about your defense, but still, you didn't do smart things. You have arguably one of the best kickers in the game in your punter, Fox. You just paid him a ton of money earlier this season to be the highest paid punter in the league. And you don't want to go to him? You don't want to give him a chance to try to pin Green Bay deep? You don't want to give him the chance to who the hell cares if he kicks it in the end zone? Make them go 80 yards. Who the hell cares? Make Aaron Rodgers move the ball on you. Do you realize how many times the Detroit Lions forced Green Bay to punt in this game? Do you know how many? I'm sure you do. You have a stat sheet in front of you. If you don't, I'll tell you. It was 0 times. This defense forced Green Bay to punt 0 times. Okay? So I don't give a shit how good you feel about your defense. Your defense forced turnovers. And yeah, that's a big deal. And you were able to get the ball back because of turnovers or Green Bay shooting themselves in the foot. Your defense could not stop Green Bay unless Green Bay shot themselves in the head in crunch time. So you doing things on 4th down, whether it's 3rd and 1 and now it's 4th and 3, and you're like, hey, 3rd and 1, let's run it up the middle again with Jamal Williams. Haven't we seen this play before? I know we've seen it in the Minnesota game. I can count at least 4 other times that I've seen that same exact play. And you know what? That same exact play, you know what it comes up with? It comes up with you losing yardage. So now it's 4th and 3. You couldn't pick up the first down on 3rd and 1. Now it's 4th and 3. You think you're going to get yardage? You're going to try to pass the ball? Like, what are we doing? Dan Campbell and his play calling and what goes on is absolutely horrible. And I don't want to hear people who tell me about analytics. Look, I'm all for analytics, and I support the usage of analytics in football games. I do. All right? But your analytics don't take into account that Aaron Rodgers regularly kills you. Your analytics don't take into account that your offense hasn't been able to complete a 4th down. Your analytics don't take into account that Jamal Williams up the middle hasn't worked numerous times. Analytics don't take into account basically who you don't have on your roster and who you're playing against. They don't take into account that you don't have DeAndre Swift, who's a pretty good player in this league when he's healthy, if he can stay healthy, if he's not on a pitch count. So I don't want to hear about your analytics. You can take your analytics and you can ball them up and shove them up your ass because I don't care. I really don't. Dan Campbell continues to put this team in bad spots. This team won this game in spite of Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell at this moment in time is an absolute joke to me. I'm not sure if you've seen this quote by Sean Payton. He was on with Colin Cowherd. And I usually find his segments on Colin's show to be quite entertaining. That's about the only thing I find really entertaining about Colin's show is when Sean Payton's on there. But Sean Payton has the audacity to come on and be like, this guy has a chance to be the offensive version of what Vrabel is to the Titans. He's a former player and a tough guy. Yeah, that is awesome. But you know what Mike Vrabel has? He's got a mind. He knows how to use it. He's been there, done that. Dan Campbell is essentially your hillbilly cousin who lives in the backwoods and chews chew and likes to go shoot shotguns at squirrels.
Yeah, no.
That is what Dan Campbell is.
No, I know you're frustrated, and I want to provide a little bit of context.
Oh, pissed, man.
I know you're pissed. I know you're absolutely
pissed
with
this team, bro.
And here's the problem, okay? And we'll look at it. We'll peel back the later a little bit. First of all, that comment by Sean Payton, he said, when I interviewed Dan for the job. So Dan obviously is a great speaker and definitely can sell. He can sell himself. And look, Dan Campbell has the X's and O's foundation. And I believe, look, the issue at hand is most of us believe that, play field position, you don't run 4 wide when it's 4th down out of shotgun when you have an opportunity with that offensive line. The play calls have been bad. Dan Campbell says it that they're not giving the players the opportunity to make the plays on fourth down, and that's been consistent. That is coaching, absolutely. But the philosophy that you probably can fairly state is that he believes his team doesn't have enough talent defensively, doesn't have enough talent to, handle giving the ball back. So that's what he does. He said, we're going for it. That his philosophy is we're going to be aggressive come hell or high water, that if we can steal a possession or two, maybe we get an extra couple points. You got to remember, too, his team is decimated with injuries, and there are situations in which Dan Campbell does not care. I don't think that right now, to be honest, when he's got a 6-year deal, he does not care about the end result of the wins. When the owner says tear down, when the general manager comes out and trades your best player, Dan Campbell we all think his seat's hot, but his seat is cool as ice. So he doesn't care. And his philosophy is go for it. So Sean Payton, you got to remember, that's his boy. You don't go, Sean Payton's not going to go on Colin Cowherd and be like, I'm really disappointed that Dan Campbell can execute on fourth down. I'm really disappointed he went to Minnesota and really fucked up the decision making. He's not ever going to say that. So his opinion really on that side is null and void about Dan Campbell. It's pure bias.
He doesn't have to say that.
What's that?
He doesn't have to say that. He doesn't have to come out and say those things.
No, he can be critical. He can say Dan needs to do better. He needs to get more wins, which he says. So really, in the end, Sean Payton is biased. So there's no real relevancy for that. When you employ somebody, you pay him a lot of money, and he did a lot of work for you, it's biased. So that opinion is irrelevant. But your point to Dan, that's the decision he makes, is that I'm going to be aggressive come hell or high water, and I don't care. The problem is I'm okay with the aggression. The problem is the play calls are atrocious, and they're not getting better. The defense probably had a chance to bail out Dan Campbell in this game, but you are definitely right to raise the red flag because Dan Campbell, with better players, do we see a shift? I don't think so. I think Dan Campbell, if he stays into year 3 and year 4, there might be a game, not in the playoffs, but a game you need to win, maybe against the Bears or Packers late in the year, and you need that win to stay relevant in the postseason discussion, and it's 4th and 2, and he's going to definitely, with the defense playing well, he's going to go for it. They're going to fuck it up, and they're going to lose that game. It's there. The writing is on the wall. You have a justification to be mad, but I think that your level of anger is just a little bit high because I truly think when you hear from the GM, the owner, and the coach, they don't give a shit about wins. They just don't. Because
then why do I give a shit about this season then? Then why do I tune in? Why do you fans donate money to this then?
Okay.
If the owner doesn't give a shit, the general manager doesn't give a shit, and the head coach doesn't give a shit.
Here's why.
Then why should we give a shit?
Here's why.
Then why should we care?
Here's why. Because you're not looking at wins. You're looking at the development of you're looking at brooming out Amani Arawaria. You're looking at brooming out TJ Hawkinson, potentially brooming out DeAndre Swift, sifting through the riffraff of the former regime's top picks and bringing in your guys, which every regime does. Kirby Joseph makes plays. Aiden Hutchinson, interception. Malcolm Rodriguez, before Jeff Okudah from the old regime friendly fired half the fucking team, makes plays. So what you're seeing is the steady transition away from the dumpster fire players from the old regime and moving towards the Penei Sewells. You're building, now you got 6 to 7 players out of a roster that can move forward. And then when you put a quarterback with it, with a realistic running back that can potentially stay healthy, now you're moving forward. So you're looking at not wins. Unfortunately, guys, you have to remove wins. It's done. You said it. You watch because you have now a handful of players that can realistically be looked at as your core. And then when you add the quarterback decision, now we can establish firmly what this is about. Goff is just an afterthought. Whoever the next quarterback that is signed is going to be, whether it be from the draft or they muscle up for Lamar Jackson, whoever it is will be the determining factor when you can fully evaluate. But there are players on this roster that make plays. Jerry Jacobs is a lightning rod. He can make plays. They broomed out Amani Arawaria, gave him only 1 defensive snap. So the reason why you watch is the young development. But the problem is, again, this is just based on a curve because the Packers are terrible. Now you have a clear player in the Bears with Justin Fields that has a strength. He can run the ball. And the plan is going to be for him to run the ball a little bit against this horrible defense. Can you stop it? That's where the concern is going to be is Aaron Glenn really just a rah-rah coach, or can he put together a game plan multiple times? So that's where it's at. But I respect your opinion in regards to the coaching. They just are acting in a way that you don't like, but I think it will come back to cost them. But why would you give the football back to your defense when your linebackers aren't that good and you know it? Your cornerbacks are still young, and Jeff Okudah's only played 18 games. You want to win the game. And I don't know, you can't practice that and get better at that until you do it. But right now, fourth down, late in games, fourth down execution, I'm of the opinion, and I think a lot of people are, is it's okay if they lose if you're just a little conservative. Take the 3 points early in the game. Kick field goals, punt the ball, make your opponent go 90 yards instead of 60 yards. It's really common sense shit, which I think is where Detroit's not used to it. I'm not used to it. You're not used to it. We're not used to seeing this level of aggression because he's doing it despite in the face of constant failure. But we'll see one day with a running quarterback or with a different running back that maybe you start to turn the tide on these fourth downs. But aren't you impressed with the young play? Did you not see Aiden Hutchinson basically break away from his responsibility and read Aaron Rodgers make the play? Kirby Joseph, 2 interceptions. Malcolm Rodriguez is a lightning bolt. There is a slow developing young core of draft picks that are starting to make some plays.
Yeah, look, I'm impressed with the development of a lot of the younger players, and I'm impressed with what Kirby Joseph was able to do. I'm impressed what Aiden Hutchinson has been able to do this season. I'm impressed with the development of Jeff Okudah. I'm impressed with them bringing in basically tight ends and feeding them the ball all day long and watching them do things that Hawkinson wasn't able to do. I'm impressed with that. I think the young talent it's nice to see. I love Malcolm Rodriguez. At the same time that I'm watching the growth and the development of the young players, you have to be watching the growth and the development of the head coach and this coaching staff. And I think that's where there's a bit of a disconnect. Yeah, I'm seeing it with the players, but when your head coach comes out and he continues to put your team in bad spots and the team's got to go and win in spite of him, that's a bit of an issue because I don't have the confidence that he's going to be able to figure this out. Like let's look at it this way, right? Let's say all the pieces kind of fall the way that I'm assuming this team wants them to go, and they get the first overall draft pick. So that means they drafted second overall last year. They'll be drafting first overall this year. We're both under the assumption that they will take their quarterback because I don't think either one of us think that Jared Goff is good enough to get the job done. So now they go out and they grab a young quarterback. They'll probably saddle him with a backup who's absolute shit, like Jared Goff has a backup who's absolute shit. Matt Stafford had a backup who's absolute shit. And you just go down the line, every backup that's ever been here is absolute shit. So you now have a young quarterback. You're going to heap all this responsibility and all this pressure on him. Do you trust Dan Campbell? Do you trust this coaching staff to get the best out of that player, to be able to develop that player into this elite talent who's going to become the face of your franchise, be the guy to be able to take you to that next level? Because I'll be honest with you, with what I've seen so far, yeah, it's good to see Kirby Joseph take a step forward. Yeah, it's good to see Aiden Hutchinson continue to develop, especially after a very slow start. It's good to see Jeff Okudah take a couple steps forward. It's good to see some of these guys take these steps forward. But I'll be honest with you, this coaching staff, I have little to no confidence in them, in their abilities to be able to handle a prize commodity like that, to be able to handle something that I'm not sure how you look at quarterbacks, but I look at quarterbacks as being very delicate, very fragile. It's a lot of mental and it's a lot of physical, and you've got to find the right combination. There have been many times where you have quarterbacks that come into this league and mentally they just don't have it, and they're wrecked and they're fried and they become busts. There's a ton of times where you have guys who are physically capable of doing a ton, but they don't have the support that they need and they don't get the coaching that they need, and they just kind of hit this peak and they don't ever ascend any higher, and they're just kind of this middle of the road guy. I think Jared Goff's a great guy that you can kind of look at as having a lot of the physical tools, but as far as coaching and being able to get to that next level, he just kind of he's hit his ceiling. He is kind of what he is. I don't know if I trust this coaching staff with a young commodity like that. I haven't seen enough. I haven't seen this coaching staff put this team in good enough spots where I'm like, you know what? I trust them with we'll say it's Bryce Young, or if you're like CJ Stroud. Yeah, I see what they're doing. I trust them with CJ Stroud. I trust them with Bryce Young or Hayden Hooker or whoever it is. Whoever your quarterback is, insert him here. I haven't seen enough. I don't trust these guys. And that's where my big concern is, because I get what you're saying. I totally understand what you're saying. There's a lot of good things going on right now with these young guys, a lot of development, but it's the future. And if you're telling me that this team is playing for the future and playing to get that number 1 draft pick, fine. I'll go along with that story and I'll buy in. Yeah, this team is basically tanking without saying that they're tanking. That being said, Dan Campbell hasn't done enough and hasn't shown that he can learn from his mistakes, that he continues to repeat week in, week out, and hasn't given me the confidence that he has the ability to be able to take this team to the next level. And look, I told you last week, I'm basically out on this guy, and this week kind of sealed the deal for me. Like, I am done with Dan Campbell, and I wanted Dan Campbell to work. I like Dan Campbell. I find Dan Campbell to be a really likable guy. I just don't want Dan Campbell as my head coach. I want to go drink beers with Dan Campbell. I want to go to the bowling alley with Dan Campbell. I want to go to the titty bar with Dan Campbell. I want to go do all these things with Dan Campbell. I don't want him to coach my football team, though.
Yeah, it's super tough because he's learning on the job. He's not making necessary adjustments when things aren't obviously working. He's stubborn, and that's just the way it's going to be. And this time it bailed you out. But the crazy part is I hear people say that he's going for to try to win the game, but the record's 2-6. So try to be conservative. Try to play field position. Try and see in a year where results really probably don't matter, see if your defense can stop them from going 90 yards as opposed to what happened in that contest. So you recognize, Aaron Rodgers told Pat McAfee on Tuesday, he said, we made a lot of the mistakes. They were moving up and down the field. They had a chance. Remember now that Dan Campbell played with fire in this game, in that the Packers moved the ball, and then all of a sudden you get towards the time of the game where you need money time, and you're throwing to Sammy Watkins, who's looking the other way. The half your roster on offense got hurt. Your offensive line's banged up. You don't have your rookie, and you're just like, what the hell? And then they still had one final play. There was just great miscommunication where the football looked like it had no chance of being completed. So it's just really tough at the highest level when you look at it and you play with fire that many times that you don't make adjustments. It's crazy. But I still see something there. I see a team that potentially could go to Chicago and play at a high level. I don't see them quitting. I don't see them mailing it in. I think that maybe firing a coach sent the message, whoa, Dan is nice and things like that. But if people don't perform, your ass hits the bench. Like Amani Arawarye, like Michael Brockers, Aubrey Pleasant gets fired. They trade away. Sometimes there's a renewed focus when you make those kind of decisions. And remember, Dan Campbell is nice in the media. He's funny. You want to have a beer with him. But he'll lay into these players. He has that in him. He played for Bill Parcells. So there's a little bit of that, protect the players in the media and light the fire under their ass in the locker room. So I'm waiting, and I think that what you're doing is you're grading on what you see right now, and I'm telling you, there's still two or three more pieces. You have to wait and see what kind of quarterback do Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell pick to bring in here, because that will be the final piece in this rebuild. The offensive line is performing well. You're starting to see, Jamal Williams emerge and have a lot of multi-touchdown games. So there's some framework of something there. The problem is we still haven't even seen now what their superstar potentially could look like. What if Jameson Williams comes in and all of a sudden there's just lightning in a bottle and you have this Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow connection with Goff? Now, I'm laughing because I have a bad feeling that just a bad nagging feeling. The first deep route that Jameson Williams is going to have, he's going to have like 7 yards of separation and Goff will underthrow him. Could you imagine that? That video probably will go viral, in that the number one narrative right now is Goff can't hit him. And Goff is a quarterback that needs everything to go right in order for things to go well. And you take away Reynolds, you take away weapons, it's clear. So it's a fascinating look at where this team's at. I'm curious to see where they go when they play the Bears, the Giants, and the Bills. Do you just lose out, or do you get to 4? Do you get to 4 wins by Thanksgiving? I'm very, very curious, because that Bills game could be telling too. If you go into that game and everybody's high and mighty and not performing at a high level, you make a lot of mistakes and you get your ass blown out, there's going to be a continued heat because it's only 2-6. And Robert Saleh, the Giants, the Jets, they're doing a lot of wonderful things with clear advantages. So I'm curious to see, do you get mad too? Because, a lot of times in Detroit sports, and we've had this conversation probably 50 times over the 9-10 years we've been doing this, but the Lions winning actually dropped them, and you made mention of it, dropped the Lions out of the number one draft spot where you could have had Will Anderson, you could have had leverage to potentially listen to great offers to get a plethora of picks. It drops you from 1 to 5, which takes you out of the top quarterbacks, takes you out of Will Anderson, and puts you in a different kind of category. Does it bother you that you say, look, if you're going to lose out, don't be this wishy-washy team that just always kind of ends up with the 7th pick? Now, there's a benefit of getting the Rams' 2nd pick, which could be number 15, but I would rather have number 1 and number 14 as opposed to 7 and 14. And so for me, I'm sitting in the press box going, man, to be honest, I wouldn't mind if Aaron Rodgers just tossed it. It would be good for business. We could actually have more fever and fervor and debate about his decision-making. And the Lions still stay at number 1. I'm not terribly invested in the wins and losses this year. I would rather go for the top pick because I think Brad Holmes with a number 1 or number 2 pick, probably odds are we'll draft a player that will be a player that will play here for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm all about what's best for this organization. I think that's where I'm coming at, especially on this show today. I'm all about what's best for this organization, whether it be Dan Campbell or whether it be the number 1 overall draft pick. I think this team would be in a lot better position if they had one of those top 2 picks, because there could be the argument that could be made that who's ever at the top, it will take Will Anderson because he's probably the best player in this draft. That being said, the Detroit Lions need a quarterback. So you go take the best available quarterback that's there. You'll basically have your pick. So I'm all about whatever is best for this organization going forward. And yeah, man, I think Dan Campbell losing the rest of these games, that's fine with me. This is something that I talked about in the very beginning of the season. I said that I wanted this team to basically lose out, but what I wanted to see this team playing hard, and I wanted to see growth from Dan Campbell. I get to see this team's playing hard, but I'm not seeing the growth from Dan Campbell. Right. And that kind of becomes the issue here. It becomes, I'm not sure which way I want this team to go, right? I want them to lose, but I don't want Dan Campbell to keep making these bonehead moves. This is what the Lions do to you. This is exactly what they do to you. They put you in these spots where you're almost rooting against them. It's one of the only organizations that I know of, maybe the Washington Commanders, where you actively root against the organization just so they get better. But they don't ever get better, and that's part of the problem. Honestly, that's part of the problem, part of the issue with this team. It's very, very frustrating. But yeah, I would love for them to have the 1st overall pick. To actually answer your question in a long, roundabout way, I would love for them to have the 1st overall pick. I would love for them to go out and grab that quarterback of the future, or if it's Will Anderson and they're able to figure somebody out with the Rams pick, and hopefully the Rams keep losing, and hopefully that pick goes from being 14, 15 to being 10, maybe even 8 or 7. Because look, I hate the Rams. I hate Matt Stafford. I want that team to just have a bomb dropped on it. Let them continue to lose. I don't give a shit. Whatever is best for the Detroit Lions organization is what I want, and that's what I want to see. That being said, I also want to see a head coach making the right moves, doing things that are actually football smart. There's actual intelligence, and then there's football intelligence. And the one thing we were promised with Dan Campbell is he might not be the smartest guy in the room, right? Honestly, his first press conference, it seemed like he was a professional wrestler cutting a promo on everybody in the room. He might not be the smartest guy there, but he's got football IQ and he's got football acumen. You know what I haven't seen through this stretch of however many games it's been with him as the head coach? Haven't seen any of that football acumen. Haven't seen any of that football IQ. And that's where I'm throwing the flag, and that's where I'm drawing my line. And that is why I'm upset and why I'm annoyed with this Detroit Lions football team.
When you quickly browse and look, do you think the Bears rebuild is ahead of schedule? They got their Justin Fields, who ran for 178 yards, an NFL record for quarterbacks rushing, You see the potential of what he can do. They've obviously moved on from two of their top defensive stars, but they got more wins than the Lions. And we sit here, which was funny in that, at All Lions, we have to do these kind of divisional previews with the other writers and publishers, and we got to kind of say, yeah, what do we think? And of course, half the people put the Lions above the Bears. And so the Bears guy is kind of funny in that, the Bears now have a lot more wins, and their rebuild looks to be a little bit ahead of what the Detroit Lions are doing right now. And you recognize this is a game the Lions potentially, if they could figure out how to dial up the pressure at the highest level, this could be an Aiden Hutchinson, Josh Pascal kind of game. This could be a game where Isaiah Buggs and Ali McNeil can handle some business. So I'm very fascinated. How do you see this Lions game going? And when you look at it, does it kind of bother you a little bit that the Bears, even though we laugh at them, we look at the Bears and the Vikings, I'm a little bit disappointed that had you done things just a little bit differently, if you guys pay attention, had a great chance to work with Brian Baldinger, had a great conversation with him, just a natural conversation talking about the Lions, building and things like that. If you didn't trade and you just took two more impactful defensive players with the Green Bay Packers taking a step back, if you would have kind of maybe expedited this rebuild and maybe just took a risk a little bit and said, wait a minute, maybe had the vision, you know what? What does it mean that the Packers went young? Aaron Rodgers taking up $50 million of their cap. Okay, maybe that means Minnesota's going to be the team. Maybe if we push a little bit, we can beat Minnesota. We can kind of take advantage of some certain situations. You could have beat them in their own house. So this is where people get pissed and nervous when you look at rebuilds, in that if you just would have veered off of your plan, because we all have plans. We all say, hey, let's try this, and then something happens that maybe could have veered you in a different way. If you'd have drafted maybe a little bit better and not busted on Levi Onwuzurike, you don't potentially take an injured player who hasn't played a single down in Jamison Williams. You make a move, you could have been at this point in time, because it's crazy. If you're sitting at 5-3 right now, you're in second place in the division sniffing up against the Vikings, and maybe you make a move. Maybe you make that first-round pick that you have additionally, and you trade it, and you get the Roquan Smith, and you kind of start this rebuild in a new manner. So that's where I think fans are legitimately debating where this rebuild's at, because you look around, you say, man, you guys are taking the slow-ass approach with this for a hungry-ass fan base, and there are teams, look, the Vikings, they have a whole new coach, whole new general manager. We use that as an excuse for them to lose games with Kirk Cousins. 7-1, cuz. When you look at it, does it make you a little bit more frustrated when you look at how the Bears are doing it? Are they really that far ahead? Are they pulling away? Or with a couple moves, could the Lions even win this week if they just blow out the offensive line, take advantage? Because I think Justin Fields can be on his ass a lot this week.
You're funny. You really are. I love how you sip this Kool-Aid. You start working for Sports Illustrated, and you start covering the Lions. Next thing you know, you are sipping the Kool-Aid, drinking the cornbread, or eating the cornbread, just lathered up in all the Honolulu blue butter. But haven't you seen Justin Fields sit on his ass like 50 times
No.
You shut up now. You've already talked. You shut up now. Has this team been able to stop a running quarterback?
No.
Do you remember what happened with Jalen Hurts? Do you remember what happened with Geno Smith? I don't even think Dak Prescott's a running quarterback, but do you remember what happened with Dak Prescott? Do you remember what happened with Tua? You have the corpse of Aaron Rodgers. He ran all over your ass this week. How are you going to stop Justin Fields? This team defensively has trouble staying in their lanes. I think with the Bears, where the Bears are at right now, the Bears figured out, hey, we're going to stop doing things the hard way. We've got a quarterback who's not great at throwing the ball, but he's really, really athletic. Let's put some more run plays in there. Let's let him become a little bit of a threat. Let's let him become a little bit of an option, and let him just kind of do what he's naturally good at. He starts running the ball. Next thing you know, it opens up things down the field. That's where the Bears are at. The Bears stopped trying to cram a square peg into a round hole. They're like, oh, hey, how about we put the round peg in the round hole and see what happens? That's where they're at. This team, I don't think, has any shot of stopping the Bears. On top of that, they're traveling to Chicago. I just don't see that working well for them. This team can't stop a mobile quarterback. This team hasn't been able to stop a mobile quarterback. Through 25 games of the Dan Campbell regime, what gives you any confidence that this team's going to be able to stop a mobile quarterback? What? Tell me. Please tell me. Inform me, because I haven't seen it. I haven't at all. There's nothing there, man. I'm gonna be honest with you. I think you're a little bit hooked up with the Lions here, and now next thing you know, it's where your paycheck's coming from. So it skews a little bit of what you're putting out here. Come on, man. Be honest with yourself here. Be honest.
Let's look at it from this. Yeah, obviously, I saw the biggest hole open up I've ever seen, where Aaron Rodgers ran through, and it was the wildest.
It felt like he ran for 40 yards.
Yeah, it was just to see Aaron Rodgers secure a 16-yard gain when he needed 16 was crazy. But yeah, you absolutely are correct. Justin Fields should be running his ass off, but maybe the Lions will use a QB spy. Maybe they'll figure it out. Maybe they will try and adapt, or maybe they won't. Maybe they just will be as stubborn as possible and just let it happen. But I see, when you look at it and you say, okay, you have this game plan, you know what you got to do. I think that you got to send the pressure, but you're absolutely right. Maybe one of these times they'll actually get home with the pressure. But yeah, I could see a bold prediction where Justin Fields breaks the record against the Lions. I could see it. It could be very, very much a long afternoon, but there's not much else. I mean, yeah, they have a great running game. Yeah, the Bears have a lot going for them, but they did at the same time. They have now moved on from two of their defensive weapons, and I think that you give the ball to Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamal Williams, and a couple tight ends. See what happens. Play another game just like the one you just played, 21-19, 21-18, and see what happens. No, I think the odds are low. I think the Lions are underdogs again, but it's not as bad as it may seem. This one has another chance to be competitive.
Yeah, I don't see it the same way at all. I'll be honest with you, I just don't.
You see a blowout? You see Fields
like
just
fantasy
light
advice?
him up?
You want fantasy advice for this week? If you got Justin Fields, or if he's available in your league, go get Justin Fields. Play him. He's going to run for. He 178 yards last week. He's going to go for 200 this week. Honestly, man, I just don't see it happening. Look, I want to say that I see a shootout. I also expected a shootout last week with Green Bay, and we got a bit of a clunker here. But I kind of see a shootout because I don't think the Bears' defense is all that great. But I think that offense with Justin Fields being able to run the ball is much more prolific. I think the Lions can take advantage of the Bears' defense, and they can kind of put some points up this week. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown gets more involved, and I think that helps a little bit. But in the end, I just don't think the Lions have the ability to stop a mobile quarterback. They don't have the guys to be able to do that, whether it's Pascal, whether it's Hutchinson, whether it's Kirby Joseph, whether it's insert player here. Well, we don't even know what's going on with Malcolm Rodriguez right yet. You know what I'm saying? And if he is missing out of that linebacking core, that's a huge loss because your linebacking core is arguably one of the weakest parts on this defense. So I have zero faith that this team gets it done this week. I just don't think it happens.
Yeah, because the league this week was crazy. Can you imagine a professional football team looking to television for upper level management to run the team? Can you imagine?
Oh, dude, the Colts are fucking sick.
Yeah,
that's just disgusting. What is going on?
Yeah, can you imagine an organization trusting a former player to come in and do something like that? I mean, only the fucking Lions and Colts would be so brazen, and to put Matt Millen as a general manager, that was great to see everybody like, well, fuck, the Lions did it. So the Lions did it at an even higher level. They put Matt Millen right from the television booth right into the general manager position. And the Colts, if you get a chance, just go online, take 30 minutes, and type in Colts Twitter and listen to that press conference. It literally looked like one of the biggest shit shows that should have went 5 minutes. We're here. This is why we did it. 1 or 2 questions. Take it from the Athletic and 1 from the team and keep it moving. They literally let the reporters barrage them with question after question, and it was one of the wildest press conferences I have ever seen in regards to just coming off of the Lions, where a couple tough questions. Okay, guys, thanks, bye. And they cut that shit off. These people are gone. Once the tough questions started hitting Brad Holmes, okay, guys, bye. 3 questions for Sheila. Okay, guys, see ya. And they pull the hook. So I get it, but 45 minutes of them just trying to figure out how to lie and tell people that they're tanking when they're trying to portray that Jeff Saturday is going to be a leader. Get the hell out of here! It sent everybody up in arms. It was crazy this week. And finally, did you get a chance to see the picture of the MILF with the shirt with the lady? It was really cool. The Lions and Dan Campbell gave props to this is featured on the Lions Twitter. They gave props to the fans. There's a photo of Aaron Rodgers, and it's the crowd going crazy. Well, there's a woman directly in front in the photo, and it's farther away. People zoomed in, and she's donning a MILF shirt. And it is hilarious because the Lions say, you know, we hear you, we appreciate you. And there's this lady standing up that says MILF. So all the people in Detroit caught on to that and were just laughing their ass off like, thank you guys for promoting it. You go, girl, do your thing. The Lions fans were loud, man. They still were there. But the Packers, you know, the one thing I'll say is it has been wild. This is the year where I've heard a lot more loudly and boldly the chants of the opposing teams. Dolphins came in strong. Let's Go Packers were really strong. So you guys are slick out there. You guys are dumping your tickets, and I can see why. I don't know if you know, Brian went out to the game, and I was like, once the first half hit, I said, bro, sorry, father-in-law, you got to drink, man. You got to. This game sucks. He's like, I know, but I can't. The beers are $15, $20. I said, what? $15 to $20 beers at Ford Field. I haven't gone.
Bro, that's what I'm saying. Like, why should anybody go and pay that kind of money?
No, you go. No, because beforehand you go and you hang with your fellas in the parking lot. You can get trash for $5. You can't buy a beer. Who in their right mind buys a beer? I said $15. I was raising my eyebrow 3-4 years ago when it was $12. But yeah, it's ridiculous. Come on, man. Give these people a break. Make it $10 across the board. It's crazy, man. It's crazy. $15, $20 beers, and then online, a smattering. I'm gonna have to pay more attention. Some people were talking about just the level of food service just hasn't been the same throughout Ford Field. So the experience is not the same, and it's too pricey. So yeah, of course, if I wasn't going for free and having some benefits, I could not imagine being a season ticket holder at this point in time if you're not going to give great service and not have really quality fair prices. $15 to $20 beers makes it.
You know, if that team was like the Buffalo Bills, it would make sense.
Yeah.
But this team is regularly absolutely atrocious.
Yeah, 15.
There is not a whole lot. If you're a Lions fan, there's not a whole lot to really grasp onto.
Paying $300-$400 to watch a 15-9 game where Aaron Rodgers just tanks it. So, craziness. But it was an interesting week. We'll see how this carries over into this week because Dan Campbell was on the hot seat when he was like, man, I'm exhausted. He's feeling the heat. The pressure's ratcheting it up. The reporters are starting to wonder, is Goff the future? What's going on? Where's the power struggle lie here? So the Hawks are sniffing around what's going on between Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell. So wins cure all. The mood this week of the team will be positive, and we'll see how it translates into this Sunday against the Chicago Bears. For all great takes from Adam, remember, no bullshit from Adam. He tells it like he sees it, and he'll always give it and tell it like it is. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. If you think we're being overly critical, you think that the Lions are maybe potentially on the verge of a 2-3 game winning streak, let us know. Hit us up. We appreciate all comments that come to us. We greatly appreciate it. We appreciate all the support you've been giving us over these years. And as we trek toward episode 500, it's going to be a fun ride with the Lions. Next week or so, we'll probably peek into the Red Wings as they accumulate points and probably maybe just brush on the Pistons because young youth is continuing to struggle with that franchise. For the Jock, Adam Strozinski, I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Podcasting time has come to an end. See everybody next time on the latest edition of Doc and Jock.